Cool. Data modeling. Who's into data modeling? All you? OK, good. You're in the right place. So we're going to talk about why it's dead and why it's alive, because that happens. Zombie. Sorry, this. There we go. About me, I wrote a book called Fundamentals of Data Engineering. Who's read this book or heard of it? A few people? OK, who does data engineering out of curiosity? OK, cool. Anyway, what else? Recovering data scientist. I still work as a data engineer and architect. Give a lot of talks. You can read the rest of it. But let's talk about a few things. Why this talk and why now? So this talk really is spawned from Fundamentals of Data Engineering. When I wrote it, it was wildly successful. But the thing I was really upset about was data modeling. And everyone kept asking questions about it. What about this? What about that? Why didn't you include this? Why didn't you include that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm stupid. I tried to do the best I could. But the thing is, I really felt like the topic was important, but it also felt widely ignored in the world. Who's seen data modeling sort of fall off a cliff recently? A lot of people, right? And this is a big problem, right? So we talk a lot about data modeling. I can't say that we're doing it. In my consultancy, I see a lot of teams paying me a lot of money because their data models aren't in good shape. And then finally, if we continue to ignore data modeling, I think the consequences are going to be severe. But why? Why would they be severe? Well, whose company wants to do AI right now? Everyone. Who's heard of AI? Everyone, right? How do you think it's going to work if your data models aren't in good shape? Who thinks it's going to work really well? Who would bet their job on putting a large language model in their corporate data sets right now? Anybody? Anybody at all? You would? My kid does. I think he has the title of sales director on his badge there, so that's pretty fun. But corporate data sets, right, they're overwhelmingly messy and pretty crappy. And as an industry, there's a lot of attention paid to AI and data right now. So if we're not going to do it now, my question is, when the hell are we going to do stuff like data modeling, data governance, data management, MDM, things we've been rallying about for years, decades, and we still aren't getting it. If we're not going to get these things done right now, when are we ever going to do it? What are you waiting for, right? So that's what this talk is about. So talk about data modeling. What is a data model? Talk about why it's dead, and then we'll talk about why it's alive, because I like to live in the world of contradictions. What's a data model? Anybody want to take a stab at what a data model is, just real quick? Gus? What's that? Yeah, a diagram represents how your information flows, right? So, yep. OK, it's Susan doing this. So data models, right? So this is a definition from 1978 from William Kent in his wonderful book, Data and Reality. I would suggest data professionals read this book. Around this time, it's interesting, because this is about when computers were coming into the fold, and people were trying to figure out how do you represent reality and data in a computer system. I still think this is one of the better definitions I've seen of modeling. I'll let you read it. And notice what's not here, though, right? We're not talking about physical implementations of stuff. We're not talking about Kimball, relational, COD, all this other stuff, right? We're talking about how do you represent reality in a computer, right? Here's my definition. So a data model organizes and standardizes data to facilitate believable and useful information and knowledge for humans and machines, right? We live in a world where we live with machines now. So who here feels their data is believable in their company? Jesus Christ, seriously? Okay. Who here feels it's correct? You do? Well, you're the lights on data guy, so make a lot of sense. I got this definition from Bill Inman, believable and useful. So who knows who Bill Inman is? He invented the data warehouse. He's been my mentor for a while. We're really good friends. And I asked him one day, Bill, what's your North Star? What keeps you going over the decades? And he's like, well, I believe in believable and useful information, right? And I was like, that's really short, but it makes a lot of sense. So that's a working definition for a new book I'm working on data modeling. It'll be out next year. So let's talk about why is it dead. So this is Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. I love Hieronymus Bosch. It talks about basically the ascent of humanity and its descent into hell. This is where I feel the data industry is gone. Right? I think it pretty accurately captures, you have Genesis, Adam and Eve, good times, and kind of I think where we are right now, right? Sorry to all the vendors in the room that are pitching things that promise otherwise, but I think this is true, especially with data modeling. So what happened? Well, let's look at some symptoms. Who uses DBT? It's an awesome product, by the way. I work with them all the time. Great product. But what you notice is there's thousands of DBT models for data teams, which is insane. If that was the number of your kids, that would be a really weird family. But this is the reality. There's lots of DBT models. Another example is ad hoc, reactive query-driven modeling. Who sees this? Get me some data, right? Are these things ever temporary? No. WTF does the data mean? So I don't know what it means. Scott just gave a whole thing on this. It's the new bullshit. So, and we're often ignoring and forgetting decades of standard data modeling practices. This is a huge, huge issue. So if we go back to the basics, we have conceptual, logical, and physical modeling. I'll let you read what those are. A diagram for that. But all too often, we're starting and ending at the physical level over here, right? It's like the other two are forgotten about, like thinking about data. What does it mean? How do we translate it? So here's some examples. Who does machine learning here? 1, 2, 3. Joking. 4. You have ML models. You have star schemas, DBT, streams, objects, and so forth. And so, but as I say, a lack of a model, it's still a model. It's just like a really crappy model. But here we are today, dealing with this. So, and the trends aren't looking very good. If I did a Google search on data modeling, this is what it looks like for Google Trends. It's dead, flatlined. Saw a bit of an uptick there. I think it's because I was searching for it. Relational, right, and dimensional. These are mainstays. Look at that. Anyone have an idea why that is? No? Talk after. It's kind of loud in here. I have some ideas. I think the cult of Agile is partly to blame. Who does Agile at their company? Who does Agile? Right? It's become a joke, right? You move fast, you work in sprints. I think the big problem is right now with Agile, it doesn't lend itself well to thinking, right? It lends itself well to 2-week increments of work. On the spectrum of fast and formal, fast won, right? And working with data is very easy. Every vendor will tell you this out here. Props to the vendors for supporting the event. And data exploded as well. Data is the new oil, or the new bullshit, depending on how you look at it. But the world's moved beyond rows and columns, right? The big one I see, too, is the dev and data divide, which I'll talk about here. So who does this resonate with people? Show of hands, so I can kind of see. I see a lot of nods. Oh, shit. OK, like everybody. It's a big problem. Dev makes data. Data teams get the data. But you're always in reaction mode at this point. It will never get better, right? So who empathizes with this? Who experiences this every day? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Yeah. So the consequences is fragmentation of data across the data lifecycle. Data loses accuracy, coherence, believability. And data teams, you're all losing credibility on a daily basis. This happens. So the rise of AI is also the rise of bullshit, as Scott was talking about. So it's true. And yet we hobble along and treat the symptoms, right? So that's the fact. Who feels they hobble along and treat symptoms all day? A lot of people. Welcome to a data conference. But the need for data modeling is real, especially in light of large language models. So here's actually a survey. I know it's kind of small. My friend Dimitrios Brinkman from the MLOps community did this survey of what's important to people with LLMs. And accuracy, hallucinations are like the 2 top ones, right? But what do you think this depends upon? Right? Good data, quality data that you're querying, right, from a data model. So long live data modeling. So here's some things I think we can do to bring it back. I think first of all, make data modeling a core practice. Start talking about it again with your team, your business. I think, how many people talk about data modeling in your companies? My kid over there? Yeah, okay. It's because I talk about it. No, but don't show our hands. I always want to see like the kind of the number here. For those who aren't talking about it, like why aren't you talking about it? You can feel free to shout. There's a mic around here. We can do that. I'm just curious. Anyway, I have some ideas, which we'll talk about in a bit. I think bring back conceptual and logical modeling as the other piece of this. Who's heard of conceptual modeling? Some people? What about logical? This means thinking about your data and how it's represented in the physical system, right? This is like the lost art for some reason. We just, again, jump straight to the physical, forget all about what the data means, right? And it makes people like Scott's jobs hard because he's like trying to do MDM, and it's like, well, nobody knows what it means, so how are you going to master data that you have no idea about? So conceptual model, and on that note, let's talk about what a conceptual model is. Here's something from '98. It's about describing reality, right? So again, if we go back to this, LLMs hallucinate on a good day. If your data sucks, what do you think is going to happen? But everybody wants to put LLMs on top of everything right now. So use patterns. Who's heard of data modeling patterns before? Not that many people. I'll tell you. 2 wonderful books and my research I come across is Data Model Resource Book. I think it's from like the 90s or 2000 or something. It's super early. The Nimble Elephant by John Giles. John Giles is an Australian. The guy's basically Yoda. I talked to him and I was like, this guy knows more about data than anybody I've met. Nobody's heard of him. But these are 2 wonderful books to get back to conceptual modeling. But it needs to happen. If we lose sight of what data means, which is happening right now, what do you think is going to happen? I think the consequences, again, are going to be just horrible. So, and model across the data life cycle is another one, right? So this is the reality right now. Shit flows downhill. We need to work both ways, especially with the rise of data products, as exemplified by data mesh and so forth, right? It's like data is becoming front and center in every application, and you can't ignore it. And so dev and data need to work together. I predict that one day, actually, these will be joined together. There's no other alternative. The rise of real time is going to get us there. This also means cohesive data models need to be part of the foray across the whole data life cycle. And finally, there's something I call mixed model arts. So a bit of a martial arts nerd. But that's Bruce Lee. He had this really good quote, which I think is relevant to data modeling these days. Use only that which works, and take it from any place you can find it. So as I've been working on my book, I found that data modeling is a very religious and contentious topic. There's different factions, different cults in data modeling, and it really feels like everyone's got their one true way. It reminds me a lot of, who grew up in the 1980s? People, right? So it's like you had, the question was always, what would happen if like Mike Tyson got into a fight with Bruce Lee or something like that, right? It's like these different fighting styles. And I feel right now it's incumbent upon data professionals to really understand the gamut of data modeling techniques and know when to use them across the data lifecycle. This includes stuff like streaming, NoSQL, machine learning, and so forth, right? The world's changed, and we're still yet arguing over Kimball versus Inman and COD. Like, why the hell are we doing this in 2023? COD came out in 1970. Kimball came out, what, 96? Inman 1989, Data Vault 2000. And we're still arguing about which way to go. This should shock you and disturb you as an industry that we haven't progressed from this discussion. Yet we have to. And I think this is the way. So I'm a bit short. I can have some questions here. But again, there's not a lot to it, right? But I think we're at a critical time in our industry. Because again, if we can't get this right now, when all the money in the world is paid attention to us, like when the hell are we ever going to get it right? Right? And that's my challenge to you. Bring back data modeling. Let's get this going, right? So anyway, I'm open to questions if people have them. I know it's a bit loud. I don't know if they have a mic here that we can go around, but happy to answer questions. Yeah, I guess I'll just have to come out there and.
I guess my question is around how does it kind of bring back the conceptual model? Like a lot of businesses like whether it's that.
Yeah.
Knowledge graphs help with this enterprise problem.
You want to? Sorry. There you go.
I guess the question is, do you see knowledge graphs being able to help with data modeling practices?
The one thing I forgot to mention, knowledge graphs are a big one. I think this is going to be the key to tying back large language models to stuff that's in your database, right? Juan Cicada, who knows Juan Cicada? Wonderful guy, a few people there. Juan's here, raise your hand so I can look at you. Juan, there you go. So I attended a wonderful talk with Juan the other day over at the Alan Turing Institute at City of London University, and he's been doing research right now on large language models and knowledge graphs, and it was fantastic. And what are you finding, Juan? Do these things, without a knowledge graph, how much do these models hallucinate? All the time, right? Right, knowledge graphs. I think this is part of the key to it, and so. There's a wonderful paper about knowledge graphs and large language models. I know I'm committing the final sin of like not walking on the stage. I'll walk on the stage. Large language models and knowledge graphs. These are like, as you put it, peanut butter and chocolate, right? These things work together really well, and they complete each other. So large language models are great for general knowledge, but they lack context. Knowledge graphs provide the context, and I think this is the missing link. And so, yeah. It's funny because knowledge graphs for a long time is kind of this fringe thing where people are like, and Juan's been spearheading this for years. I think he's one of the best in the world at what he does. But knowledge graphs, why would you need that, right? I think as most people talking about it, but it's like, here's why, right? We're moving from a data-centric world to a knowledge-centric world. That's hopefully where we're going, right? And so, but I've been doing my own experiments with things like large language models on different types of data models in a database. And what I'm finding is, data modeling actually matters. It's the weirdest idea in the world, but depending on the type of data you have, and here's why. Because the large language model will just spit out SQL, text to SQL, and then that SQL will query a database. Surprise, surprise, surprise. It's like you're querying it, but now you're letting a robot do it. So, but knowledge graphs are the link, absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure Juan's going to have some awesome stuff coming up about it, but yeah. In my opinion, he's leading the charge on this stuff among other people. Other questions? Yes?
So I'm a data platform engineer. We remove a lot of complexity from our domains.
Can you hold that mic up just a bit?
Okay,
more? Yeah.
Okay, we're a data platform that has a lot of automation and self-serve components so that we can remove complexity. And we try and encourage good data ops practices. What can you recommend for a data platform team to encourage our domains to do more data modeling?
I would say get in a room and understand. I think knowledge is the biggest gap we have as an industry right now with practitioners. We have no shortage of tools at this point, right? I would say we have almost too many tools. The problem is we don't know how to use them. I wrote a blog post about this a few weeks ago. It was like lots of great tools and no idea how to use them was the name of the article. And so I think this is one of the cruxes of the industry right now is really you're talking about practices and getting people reoriented to best practices. That's a far different subject than saying, oh, what tool do we bring in to do this? And I think it's as much sitting down and doing stuff like lunch and learns, book clubs, and just getting back to basics on context and knowledge, right? Because if you can't get that, I don't care what tool you bring in. I will say from a data ops perspective, data contracts are probably a really good way to go in terms of enforcing schema and getting people talking about viability of data as it comes in from producers to consumers. So data catalogs are another one I would say. Getting people used to the idea of looking up definitions of data and so forth. But all these are practices, and it breaks down with communication. So if you can't get that right, then it's like. Real-time's the other one, though. Real-time data is the one where I feel like that is going to be a forcing function for making sure like there's a feedback loop between data. Who works in batch right now? Like batch data. Who works in real-time? Some people, right? So, but you can imagine if you have real-time events coming from an application to your data, the feedback loop shortens. And so I think that's going to be a forcing function in terms of making sure schema and models are correct, right? Whereas right now, it's like people you just lob data over the hill, right? Usually app developers to data people, and it's like, well, now that's your problem, right? The ship flows downhill slide. So I think that's part of it, but yeah, there's not an easy solution because it took us a long time to get here. Through I think a lot of laziness, and it's going to take a bit to get out. But yeah, it's a good question. Other questions, comments? No questions. Okay. Well, you can find me here. That's a QR code for LinkedIn. So just add me on there. You can send me spam or whatever you want to do. But yeah, thanks. And let's bring back data modeling. Thank you.